supremacy and male dominance. So the whole notion that patriarchy...
About Australia in the 1930s, because I did a study of men in a country town in the 1930s, and a man was someone. A man was a father, a man had a job, a man was looked up to, a man was respected. Boys were held in webs of authority, and those webs were made up of fathers, other men, mothers obviously, churches, police, schools. Now, so much has changed there that it's difficult even to start with all that. But men feel they're no longer respected. Men feel that being a father isn't so important. Men feel that there are so many other people out there crying out for attention that men hardly know where to begin.
I mean, I definitely will admit and identify that there is a link that I probably have issues with men because my father wasn't available to me like on a 24/7 basis, but it's also, I mean, I kind of like to believe that that's not, you know, that's not the whole picture.
Yep, you gotta stand on your tired feet. Where we going, don't worry, you'll be there in a hurry, but you better watch your pockets because of thieves.
Well, I know that there's been some commentary, and I must say that the commentary comes from the fairly right on the political spectrum, that fears that we have gone too far. Oh gosh.
Oh dear, we haven't gone nearly far enough. Not nearly far enough.
And that young boys are confused because they don't know their roles. And I think men probably are still reeling. That's the impression I have.
And there's a lot of talk about this crisis of masculinity, and that's really what that is all about. There's a loss of traditional roles and that traditional clarity about roles, but not really a consensus about what the present and the future hold for these gender roles. So in addition to women feeling confusion maybe when they go into the workforce,
amo tantissimo le donne con una forte personalità, un bel fisico, degli occhi sempre intelligenti, attenti, che danno sempre l'idea di essere a suo agio. Quando parlano di qualsiasi cosa abbiamo a discorrere, vini, macchine, sport, politica, qualsiasi cosa, loro sanno sempre qualcosa dove sorprendermi.
Work and men used to be always in the same breath. A man worked, and work was something that men did. Now today we find men finding work more and more problematic for all kinds of reasons, that the jobs that are growing tend to be female friendly. And we have just in Australia a report this week published saying that large numbers of men in their 40s and 50s are being thrown out of work and absolutely don't know what to do with themselves.
I guess the way I feel about men exactly, I don't know, since I guess I was 7 years old, I've been a dancer. And obviously in the dance world, it's all about strength and all about flexibility. And I was more interested in male dancers than in female dancers just because of the strength. And I mean, it's just going back from all like ballet knowledge and different choreographers and how you see the ballerina. And I didn't want to be the ballerina where just like the men just carry you around. I'd rather, the men get better movements and stuff like that. And they just communicate better, like through dance, through their physicality.
I think a lot of guys feel that there is some guy somewhere who's showing them all up. There is some ideal man that's being held up for everyone else's admiration, while they themselves are being ridiculed and laughed at. If you see someone doing something stupid on television these days, it's nearly sure to be a man. Another feeling is that men have to placate women all the time. The women's magazines are full of it. Oh, my husband doesn't do this, or his breath smells, or his toes stink, or he doesn't do this, and he doesn't clean the lavatory, or he leaves the lavatory seat up. A lot of stuff about lavatories. That he's never spending enough time with the kids, that he's not doing this properly, he's not doing that properly.
All right. My impression is that men are very confused about what to do now. There are conflicting cultural expectations coexisting right now. There's nostalgia for the past. There's a desire for male strength and protection, and there's also a desire for equality. And so in regard to romance and dating and so on, I think people are quite confused. It's fascinating.
And the big question for me is, what does it mean to you to be a man? And almost no man can answer that because it is too threatening. And the fear that you'll give the wrong answer. And someone will say, oh, you're too sexist, or oh, you sound a bit wussy, or oh, God, you know, what are you? There'll be something wrong. And that points to the big problem, the troubled heart of men today, that they can't say what they are. What's a man? I don't know, you're looking at one. They can't say it out. They can't spell it out. They can't say what they are.
Because the society changed, and at home we have electrodomestic. It's not important to women at the house work every day, every hour for wash or for men or for family. Now have a good electrodomestic person is not important at home every day. My English is not good.
I mean, many men that I know, including people that I'm very close to, have been through a kind of a process of saying, what I learned as a boy about being a guy is seriously obsolete. It's seriously obsolete. The rules that you can't cry, that you can't express feeling, that you can't take responsibility in an intimate way for children, that was just wrong.
The evidence suggests that Australians are suiciding because of a lack of connectedness. Again, we raise boys to say, you're independent, you do things. We don't say to boys, you're part of the family. Family's really important to you. We don't say to boys, look after your family, look after relationships. Men do things. Girls belong. The contrast with Italy, I think, is that men are very, very strongly wound up in families. Italian men, hugely in love with their mothers forever. That men have families around them, that men are around cooking and food and wine and all those social things, and that men sit around for hours in Italy talking to each other in cafes and so on. So what are we saying? In Italy, men are related. In Australia, boys and men are too disconnected, they're too separate, they're playing computer games and so on, relating to the world through a computer screen, which isn't as good as having someone there who's warm and affectionate. And we know Italians are notoriously warm and affectionate. We laugh at them for this, and they sing opera and they do all these things, and they laugh and they cry and they do all these things. But Italian males, I think, are open to the emotions, that emotions are something a man should express.
I think that sociologists have said since Durkheim that cultures that have a lot of integration, that have really strong social cohesion, that are typically Catholic cultures or very family-oriented cultures, tend to have lower rates of suicide. It's because people are integrated into networks. So even if that integration is based on some negative things, it's not surprising to me that this might have some relationship to suicide. It's also true that in a lot of those cultures, especially the Catholic cultures, there's just a stronger taboo against suicide. It's a mortal sin, it's a shame on the family, whereas in more liberal, loosely structured cultures that are more likely to have more feminist roots, you have a more individualistic, less religiously family-dominated cultures, and I think it makes sense that people may commit suicide more often in those cultures for reasons that have very little to do with feminism in itself or family structure even in itself.
And now, in this time, the women go at work, go have your life out the house, out the family. It's normally. My grandfather is not possible because have 10 person at home, 9 work in the wood, in the factory. It's not possible for my grandmother go out because work for eat this person, for wash your shoes.
There's nothing really bothers me about the women's movement. I mean, everyone has their right to, demand equality. I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, I guess at first it seems that, like, oh, give us equality, you know, we've been put down all these years, and, you know, and men have reigned supreme. And I mean, saying that and being involved in the women's movement, that's just saying, oh yes, when men did reign supreme, and that we were lesser, or we were weaker, and now we want to be strong like men, and we have to learn from men. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just going round and round and round. It's like a vicious cycle that, I don't know. I think what's, I guess, driving the trend of androgyny, or I guess gender reversal, basically would be, I guess people are starting to realize, or people are really starting to think about different roles in society, and they don't, you know, they realize that, you know, there've always been people in the past that have been like, oh no, I don't want to subject myself to being the role of the woman, or I don't want to subject myself to being the role of the man, or what society has said. And for me, it's just, you don't want to have to identify with either one.
And they're very, very well defined. They don't have any hair in their chest. Their bodies are hugely detailed. And women look up to these, and they're certainly in the women's magazines. But they're no longer so much embedded in families. They're good-looking men, and their bodies are glorified. And they're tremendously satisfying to women. This is something we haven't talked about, but it certainly comes across in the Hollywood movies. What does this man need to be the hero of this movie? And you sit there waiting for it, and it will come that he has to take a woman to bed, and she's satisfied. And he's got a nice body, and not only that, he takes her to bed, and she has a good time, and she's obviously purring there in the background. And then he gets up out of bed, and the film can continue. But we require this of men these days. They've got to have the right bum and the right abs and the right pecs. Now, if you went back to Humphrey Bogart, if you went back to Cary Grant, if you went back to Clark Gable, I can't remember any of those movies which I ever saw guys take a woman to bed. I can't remember them taking their shirt off. There were exceptions. But that's our style of man now. It's the body, it's satisfying women, it's not so much the family man, it's being young, got it zippy and with it and new age and with computers and that kind of thing. So there's a big change.
And then there's a number of people who the press like to pick up on. You know, the Wall Street Journal, I don't know how many times they've had this exact same story, which is senior corporate lawyer quits to have babies. Have you seen these? You know, like,
Oh, I've lived these. I think I never felt that being a woman was a negative thing in my career, but I'll tell you, being pregnant and being a mother is an entirely new story. And I think of how much, my son's now 3, and I'm at this wonderful golden moment where everyone sees that he's doing well, sees that my marriage hasn't dissolved and my husband is still masculine. And I actually advise when graduate students ask me about, you know, female graduate students always go to other successful female academics and say, how did you do it? I always say,
As my father used to say, bless his heart, a man will always be the major breadwinner as long as a man can't get pregnant. Now, that's a very hard truth to say in this day and age, but I think there's something to that still.
counseling because they've been involved in what we call domestic violence. And she used to come home from those meetings absolutely shattered. She was just shattered emotionally because she would say, these guys don't get it. They say, what do you mean I can't beat my wife? She's mine. She's my property. Absolutely. And she would just be in shock. But I mean, that sense of what marriage is about, it's a very archaic sense, but it's alive and well.
Well, and if we want to talk about that, we can also, of course, mention that there's a really high rate of date rape on college campuses, a place where you would think.
Well, the trends of today are, we can see right here in Bondi, very strong trend for men to pick up the worst of what women are doing. They want to fix their hairstyle, they wanted to do their nails, they wanted to get their bodies waxed, take all the hair off their chest. Men don't have hair on their legs anymore, many of the men that I see. They are picking up the worst, so there's kind of that this might be an extreme. The future, I think we'll be seeing more of this, because women are telling us quite strongly they want attractive men, they want good-looking men with shaped bodies.
Well, I know when I was a little kid, I used to play with Barbie dolls, and I mean, they're fun. I mean, I used to play with G.I. Joes with my brother too. We'd switch on and off, but I don't know. I mean, I never really looked at the Barbie and said, that's what I want to be, or, I mean, I looked at my mother and said, that's what I want to be, or I looked at my sister and said, that's what I want to be. I don't think I've ever really looked at an actress and said, oh, that's who I want to be. I want to get breast implants. I want to, like, do all this, like, facial surgery, but facial surgery or any kind of, any kind of surgery, I mean, it seems that it's, in one way, it's condoning what, you know, you're playing into supposedly what this is men's society and you must dress for men and, you know, you must change your body for men. But then there's, oh no, I just changed my body because I actually really wanted to, and I really felt really insecure for having small breasts, so I really wanted big breasts. And I don't know, it's just, I don't know, yeah, I mean,
is one particularly people in Italian. All society change. In Italy, this change is very slowly. A person is possible to understand why, and it's possible to understand where this change go. And people change your personality with this reaction.
But I've seen it happen, and I think that it's extremely important for the future of the world, because the kinds of qualities that we associate with masculinity are the qualities that are underlying. I'm not saying they're causal, but they're certainly underlying and connecting to some of the most violent behavior and the most vicious behavior that happens in the world, starting with warfare and ending with starvation and the imposition of brute force. All of these are very linked to ancient Western notions of what male power ought to be.
In certain ways, men are definitely in crisis, because in the media, I mean, we definitely see, I mean, in one way, you know, the world is all about men, or people will think that it's all about men. But in another way, I mean, it's always been, okay, so the man is supportive, but he's always catering to the woman, but the woman must dress for him, but it's always centered around the woman.
Different rhythms.
I will see men and women relate in, like, the strangest ways, and it's just women expect that. Women expect to be taken care of, and men are supposed to be there, and, you know, what if, like, the man is weak, I guess, emotionally weak or mentally weak or something like that, then, I mean, women aren't interested in that. Supposedly women are only interested in strong men, and I don't know, I mean, there are really strong, virile images of men now, but basically, I don't know, the world has been kind of taken over by this androgynous kind of look and feel, and the whole, I guess, I don't know, maybe just in America, I don't know, but with the whole, like, gay rights movement and everything, and I mean, homoeroticism is embedded into popular culture so far. I mean, it's just advertisements everywhere, and, like, I mean, like, I look at, I don't know, there's several people in my office I would look at them like, yeah, these really cute boys, like, but you also be a girl, or, I don't know, obviously men are taking care of themselves better. I mean, they always have, but they want to be soft, but they want to be hard. I mean, there's a different, you know, it's a conflict between men and women. It's the same thing.
An important part of being a boy is don't be a girl, don't be gay. We had a list brought out in one of the Sunday papers. Girls, how to tell if your male might be a homosexual. beware if he's any of these things. Too interested in music, pays too much attention to combing his hair when he goes out the door, relates too strongly to family, too interested in cooking, too interested in his body, goes to the gym too much. We're getting the picture. There's a great pattern of things that men should not do.
I mean, the whole, I guess, biases toward gay men, and that he's weak, and that whole issue, and the lesbians, and that she's butch, and that's femme, and I mean, and transvestite, transsexual, like all different kinds of sexualities, but I don't want to buy into that either. And I mean, because then you say, oh well, you're just playing it, you're just remaking the male-female role with the same sex, like over and over again. So I don't really know where it's coming from, but I mean, it's definitely there.
But there's a constant concern with the man who calls himself straight. I can't do too much of this and I can't do too much of that. And I can have friends, but I wouldn't want to have friends who are gay. And I asked them why. Well, that might point to me. I mean, my friends might say, you've got gay friends, what's wrong with you? So there's a lot of anxiety about men these days. And once again, that simply wasn't there in the 30s.
In Tuscany, the life is good. The wine is good. The women is fantastic.
All the things that are wrong in society are because women have stepped out of the kitchen,
Right.
And I just think that's such a oversimplification and a scapegoating.
Well, and I think it's looking for, there are a lot of changes going on. You mentioned earlier, there are a lot of fundamental restructuring of the whole global economy, a lot of change, technology changes, and people are afraid. And one of those massive changes is the shift in the role of women. So they're looking, I think, to the most comfortable of those changes. It's a little bit hard to say, I'm afraid because I don't understand the technological shifts. I don't understand why my job is the way it is. It's much easier to say, why isn't my family the way I remember my family being when I grew up? And I think it's a much more immediate sense of comfort.
There's a sense for men that they want some kind of fair equality. That equality seems to be a word which only goes in one direction, like gender balance. It doesn't seem to apply for men, it applies for women. And boys in all this I see as increasingly uncertain, unsure of where they're going. And although we're saying to girls, you can be any kind of woman you want to be, we're not saying to boys, be any kind of man you want to be. We're still saying to boys, be rough and tough.
In other country, is very fast this change. A person don't know why, don't not think go this direction. Ask where is possible go to change. It's possible for a lot of person don't understand where go the society, where go people.
Our roles relating to each other just, they invalidate each other. And if a man's not strong enough and then he's weak, we're like, oh, you're not a man. And I mean, it's just, we keep building up insecurities and just like tearing people down and making them strong and weak. And it's just, I think it's all about power.
This particular thing caught my ear. Different rhythms.